This is guide. Okay, this is guide discussion number 6, part 3. This will be the last segment for when I'm gone. Please make sure that you check this out, folks, and that you're taking notes on this. Just a reminder, once again, I've shared with you the Unit 13 presentation, so please make sure that you are following along on that presentation and taking notes. All right, I want to talk for this presentation here about this section about youth culture. We ended up talking about how intellectuals criticized the 1950s. In the 1950s, there was also a growing fear of juvenile delinquency. Um, and movies like The Wild One, starring Marlon Brando, and Rebel Without a Cause, starring James Dean, seemed to reinforce an undercurrent of teenage rebelliousness. In fact, um, some teenagers at the time were doing things like wearing jeans and T-shirts. They challenged authority and were defiantly smoked cigarettes. There also seemed to be an increased sexual behavior amongst teens. So while all of you I know probably feel like nobody in the world gets you and that you're really a rebel, guess what? 1950s. They've been doing this whole rebel thing for well over 60 years. So deal with it. All right. Couple of things that maybe play into this. We think that obviously with the increase in freedoms due to the youth with having automobiles and also the spread of mass culture through televisions probably helped to make some of these trends normal for people in America. Um, Nowhere was the growing youth culture better expressed than in the rise of rock and roll music, which evolved out of a mix of black blues, white contemporary music, and black gospel. The most famous rock star of the age was a guy named Elvis Presley. Maybe heard of him? Yes, no? Um, Many adults disliked the rise of Elvis Presley, and they especially did not like the fact that he danced in a very sensual way, too sexual and too offensive for many people. Elvis was known as Elvis the Pelvis because of the way he moved his hips. All right, the Ed Sullivan Show, which was the Tonight Show. Right now it's the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Before that it was the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Before that it was the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Before that it was the Ed Sullivan Show. Going back a little ways, and there might have been somebody between Ed Sullivan and Johnny Carson. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Um, they actually refused to show his hips, the bottom part of his body, him from the hips down when he came on the show. It also is important to note that some who first heard him on the radio thought that he was black. So kind of an interesting cat Elvis Presley was. A small percentage of youth in the 1950s became part of a group known as the Beatniks or the Beats, and this group included people such as writer Jack Kerouac, and Allen Ginsberg. And the Beats and excuse me, the Beats were criticized. Um, Let me backtrack. The Beats were a group of writers, essentially, who had long hair and a liking for sexual promiscuity and drug experimentation. They criticized conformity, competition, and materialism of the 1950s. They glorified society's outcasts, and they were really the forerunners of the hippie culture of the 1960s. All right, moving along here to technological changes of the 1950s and their impact. Three major developments in technology of the 1950s and their impact here are as follows. Number one, the tremendous growth of televisions. More than 90% of households had them by 1960, and this spread conformity and consumerism. Number two, there was an explosion in the electronics industry and computers that led to new products like electric washers and dryers and more efficiency in business. And number three, there was a huge expansion in the passenger airline business and the aerospace industries in general, connecting the country closer together and laying the foundation for the space race. There was also a change in the American workforce during this time. There was a shift from industrial jobs to service sector jobs. An example would be fast food restaurants. Insurance companies were all examples of things that were more service industries, leading to a decline in union membership after 1954. So with the service industries, there was fewer unions that were needed because the unions were traditionally more of a blue-collar worker type atmosphere, and we had a rise of, by 1956 actually, the first time that white-collar workers outnumbered blue-collar workers. All right, signaling in essence, the end of the industrial age here, or excuse me, we went from an industrial to a post-industrial workforce. Last thing here before we're done is the growth of the Sun Belt. In the last half of the 20th century, there was a tremendous growth of the Sun Belt in the United States. The population of the Sun Belt greatly increased in relation to the population of the Northeast. The Sun Belt is a smiling crescent from Virginia through Florida and Texas to Arizona and California. People move to this region in search of jobs, a better climate, and lower taxes. If you put a smiley face in the bottom half of the United States, it shows where the Sun Belt is. Now, the funny thing is about all this, and the ironic thing is, these areas are primarily, with the exception of California, a lot of those southern states are primarily Republican and are against government spending, even though they benefited a lot from military spending and increased military industrialization. All right, that's it. That's it for guide discussion number 6. I'm happy we talked about it right now because you know what, we're not going to have enough time on Monday to get through all of it. So, all right, that's it, folks. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Bye.